I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing as well as one can be these days, I guess.
Yeah. Where are you from?
I'm in Los Angeles,
Oh, okay.
so
Okay. So now I think we're streaming live on YouTube. So, oh, okay. So I'll just introduce you.
uh,
Okay. So Stuart Gibbs is a children's book author who is most well known for his writing in the Spy School series. And this virtual author visit will consist of a Q&A session where students will have the opportunity to ask Mr. Gibbs questions regarding his books. So this is my first time doing this.
all right. Are we good? We're good. We're just
Um, I'll pull up the questions in email.
all right.
Okay. So these are questions that students have submitted to us that they were kind of wondering if you could answer.
Sure thing.
So someone said, "Why did you decide to start writing?"
All right. Well, I'd say that the decision it almost wasn't really a decision to start writing. It's like saying like why do you like writing is like saying like, why does somebody like chocolate or something like that. You can't really explain. You just say, well, I just do. So really, from the moment I knew I liked to read, I also knew I liked to write, and I was starting to write stories almost as soon as I could read stories. And so I know there's a lot of kids out there who are like, oh, I wanted to be a author my whole life, and I'm not saying you didn't. I just know that I'm one of those people who did, and I always wanted to write. I was always imagining where my books would be in the library or in the bookstore. So it is just part of who I am. Oh my goodness, no! Why am I getting a call now? I don't do that. I'm not answering this call.
You're fine.
Okay. Um, try to stop this. Ugh, I can't. This is even so old-fashioned phone. I can't even mute it here, but it will stop ringing in a second. I apologize for that. It's a good thing I got my answer in right before the phone.
You're fine. You got your answer in.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's awesome. And then someone said, "What's your favorite part about writing books?"
Okay, well, there's a couple favorite parts. One, the idea of seeing a book when it gets published and seeing it in a store or seeing somebody reading it is something that never ever really gets old. That's still just as exciting as I imagine it would be when I was a kid. I hold on one second. Yes. Oh my goodness, my God, so many distractions. I am a father with my kids
Yeah, I
at home
gotcha.
right now. So, okay, so oh, what else? But I'll tell you something I didn't know that was going to be part of this was just the idea that I would get to meet my readers. I worked in the film business for a long time, and a lot of the time, even on the set of the movies, they forget that somebody wrote it. I
Yeah.
honestly, they forgot to invite me to my own premiere once. So that was the level I was getting treated, and then to be in a world where kids want to come up and meet you and have questions and want to write to you and come to listen to panels and that is all just not. I mean, it's not like I'm like, oh yes, please put me on a pedestal, but it is really amazing to get to meet the people who are reading what you wrote and who kids the kids age of, that I write for are like the greatest readers ever. Because you don't ever meet an adult who's like, "Oh, I liked your book, so I read it 5 times." But kids do that,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, "You need to read another book." But it's just amazing that how they read and how excited they get.
Yeah. Kids are such a fun audience. They're so honest.
They really are.
And then someone said, "What was the first book you ever wrote?"
All right, so there's a bit of a there's sort of two answers to that because I said I used to I was always writing when I was a kid. So by a certain argument, like this is the first book I ever wrote. This was called The Day the Dinosaurs Came Back. As you can see, I got when I did the cover and the book, and I sort of miscalculated how much room I was going to have on my cover.
Wait, do you illustrate your books as well?
I do not illustrate my books, and here is why. That is, I did illustrate this one. It's not particularly easy to understand what is going on in it.
That's very correct.
But so yeah, but that was this book I wrote in like kindergarten, and my teacher said, let's bind it, and we put it into the school library. So that is a school library card. That's how I used to check out a school book. And that obviously was not the same thing as getting published, but it still meant a tremendous amount to me that my school librarian would do that for me and would encourage me that way. And so it took a lot longer till I got something published. It was I did not get something published until quite a few years later. My first book was published almost 10 years ago to the day right now. It got published in, I think, May 20th, 2010, and that was Belly Up.
Oh. Okay, that's awesome. And then what's your favorite book that you've ever written?
This is a legitimate question. I get it a lot, and I still don't have a good answer for it. It's because I work very hard on all of my books, so it's kind of like saying which of my children is my favorite child.
Yeah.
I do not have a favorite child. I should make that very clear. So yeah, it's just that you put all this time and energy into the books, and to say like, oh yeah, this one works. It's almost like saying this one works is awesome. At the same time, saying this one is not so good, and I don't ever want to say that. So.
And then, what are some of your hobbies outside of writing?
I like to be outdoors, which I feel like these days I may have to explain to children what that was. No, I like hiking a lot. I like biking a lot. In the winter, I like to ski. I like to try and see animals in the wild. The one, not a whole lot of silver linings going on right now with COVID, but we are having this weird thing where, we're noticing that with like the lack of cars and noise, animals are sort of coming into, I don't think it means their populations are rebounding. I think they're just getting more aggressive. And the other day I had 3 raccoons in my backyard, which is very exciting. So I do like to travel around the world and try and see animals in the wild when I'm allowed to do that.
Do you think that shows up in your writing a lot, like your love for nature?
I think so, yeah. And I think particularly in the Fun Jungle series, Teddy and all of his friends just love animals. But the Fun Jungle series is sort of it's a very personal series to me, because it's very much based on, it's set where I grew up. And so the newest book, Tyrannosaurus Rex, actually sort of gone out from Fun Jungle a little bit and like to a friend's ranch and things like that. And that's how I grew up. I would go to my friends' ranches and we would ride our bikes around and go just hiking around the woods and everything. And everybody just loved looking for animals and trying to, we did try to catch lizards and snakes, but I find lots of kids are still doing that. And so, so we just were fascinated by animals and wanted to all grow up and be zookeepers. And so yes, it definitely shows up in the book.
Hold on 1 second, my dog wants to be let out.
See, everybody, it's the time of day. The children, the dogs, everybody's.
Yeah. Do you feel like your characters were inspired by you or people in your life?
Sometimes it's very hard to write a character in first person, not put like some of yourself in it. Often it's kind of an idealized version of you, like I'm going to make like I think Teddy has a lot of my interests in Fun Jungle, but he's also braver than I am and more adventurous than I was as a kid. And then every once in a while I have based characters on my own children. I have based a character or two on a friend. I do write a lot of bad characters in my books, so those are rarely ever based on real people. I don't know too many despicable people in my life, so I have to make those people up. But some I have taken traits from people I admire, put them in my characters.
Yeah. And do you have any upcoming projects? that
I
you're looking
do, I
forward
do.
to?
So this October, Spy School Revolution will be out, and actually I can even show you. All right, so this is an advanced reader copy, but it's this beautiful cover here, and so this will be out in October. This is when I show it, and kids go, "Wait, you have it? Why can't you release it now?" And it's because it's not ready yet. It's not done. It still needs to be edited and everything. Then though, here's another little silver lining of COVID. I was only going to do 2 books next year, but I'm actually going to do 3 books next year. So there's going to be Charlie Thorne 2, which I believe is going to be called Charlie Thorne and the Lost City. Then there will be a new Fun Jungle, which does not have a title yet, and then there'll be Spy School 9, which also does not have a title yet. So those are all going to come out next year, and then even somewhere. This is. Oh, right. Hold on. See, I have a very messy office. And then this is just a short story. But in June, this book is supposed to come out, which is these super puzzle-tastic mysteries. I wrote a mystery in this. Chris Gravenstein did. James Ponti did. Kate Milford. Lots of great mystery writers, and we all did sort of like Encyclopedia Brown sort of short stories where you solve it. And I've been reading all my favorite fellow authors' stories in this, and they're great. That's just a little. My story's only like it's short, but there's so many other good stories.
Yeah,
so there's quite a lot of projects going on.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then, what is a piece of advice that you would give to aspiring writers?
All right, so the first piece of advice everybody's going to give you is write as much as you can. But I'm still going to give you that one because writing is practice. But I'm going to sort of amend that a little bit and say that this is going to sound kind of heavy or sour, but it, a lot of the time, like I was a kid, kids who are starting to write really get in their heads, like if I don't get published by the time I graduate middle school or high school, that means I'm not a success. I'm never going to be a good writer. And being a writer is an interesting job that you can try it out when you're a kid, right? But there's not a lot of jobs you can do that, except maybe professional athlete. And even then, kids aren't saying, boy, if I'm not a professional baseball player by the time I graduate middle school, it means I'm a failure. They realize you have to get good enough to be a professional baseball player. Well, it's the same thing with writing. And so you might write a story and not have it get published by the time you're 12, but that doesn't mean you're a bad writer. It just means that and it doesn't mean you wasted your time writing that story. You weren't wasting your time at all. You were working, you were honing your craft, you were getting better. And that's why everybody tells you to write all the time, because when you write, you're honing your craft, you're learning how to do it, and you've got to practice to get good. I tried to get things published when I was young, and they didn't get published, and that's because they weren't good enough. But I got better and better as I went. I figured out the best way for me to write the stories I should be telling, and that's how I became what I am.
Do you ever experience like writer's block, or when you get stuck, like how would you deal with that?
I think everybody does. I know there are people out there who say they don't, and I think those people are lying, or they're just not defining writer's block the way we are. Everybody gets stuck. Everybody has a day, and you're like, that didn't work out so well. I do a lot of outlining, a lot of brainstorming on yellow pads. So I do think on a day when you're stuck, again, this is a lot of pre-COVID advice. Often I would step back and go for a walk or a hike or something like that. But you can just staring at the screen thinking like, why can I not write is not particularly helpful. At the very least, stepping back and brainstorming, sketching ideas out, playing around. I am a big believer in outlining. I know not every author outlines, but the others who I know who do outline do tend, I think, we talk about this a lot. They I think get stuck less than people who don't outline. And to the point where people who don't outline will occasionally, you'll be like, maybe I should try outlining. I never heard anybody who outlined saying like, what, maybe I should just fly by the seat of my pants. So I think it does help. I think sitting down and figuring out where your story is going to go prevents you from getting stuck wondering where your story is going to go.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And then our last question kind of goes along with that. Do you have any COVID-19 tips, and what do you think students could do to stay busy?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I know I'm going to empathize with everybody stuck at home that this stakes. But you can also look at it and say, we do live at a time when, like, if this had happened even 10 years ago, you wouldn't be able to do so much of the stuff you can do now. And if you think about your grandparents, if they'd been stuck at home, or people stuck at home during the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic, they couldn't do anything, right? There were 8 books on Earth. No, it was hard to get a book. Now libraries can lend you stuff digitally. You can order books online. I recommend ordering from bookshop.org, which supports local independent bookstores. For anybody, you guys are in St. Louis, is that right?
Yeah.
I know Novel Neighbor is open and has been declared by the state or the city indispensable service. They will deliver the books to your car. You don't have to go to the bookstore. There are ways to get books. There are ways to there's so many things out there to do. You're living in a golden age of middle grade writing. It's not just I'm not the only one writing. There's so many other great authors out there who are writing. There's so many great books. There are jigsaw puzzles. There are games you can download. There are crossword puzzles online that people are making available. There are you can pick up a new hobby. You can learn a new game. You can spend some time with your parents. Take walks around the neighborhood with your mask on. There are actually lots of things you can do, and it stinks that we can't necessarily go over to our friends' homes as much as we want to, or go travel, and our summer plans might all be blown. But this is not going to be forever. And so the best thing to do is make the best of this. Read as much as you possibly can right now while you have the opportunity. And that's a pretty good way. That's a great way to travel right there. Read a book, go someplace that you've never been.
Definitely. And I think that was our last question.
Okay.
So if there's anything you want to close with, or we can just kind of wrap up.
I would have closed with that final thing there. I think just to give everybody a heart and say that we. I'll say this. I like to write mysteries because a mystery is a story where the smartest person wins, and I think that a lot of the time in our society, the smart people are sometimes not revered as much as they should be. They should, they're often portrayed as geeks and nerds and dorks on television or even in books, and that's not how they are. And right now, I think our society is turning around, going, "Oh, smart people, get us out of this one! Get us like we need our doctors. Those are very smart people. We need our epidemiologists and our people working on vaccines. And there are it's like all the smartest people on earth are working on this, and they're the ones who are going to save us in this. And at the end of the year, we're hopefully going to be like, thank you, smart people. We will never doubt you again."
Yes. Well, thank you so much for working with us. This was an awesome interview. It was so nice to get to know you more.
It's been a pleasure. I'm sorry my office was such a mess.
No, I don't mind. All right. So I think we can just end it there.